Alright guys, let's see how we can actually use the new Stripe API for creating payments intents and accepting them. So basically we would like, when we click on a buy button, to have a little bit more extended form where we can publish our information, and after everything is published successfully, we can click on pay, and this will give us whether the payment is initiated. And on top of it, when we go to the backend, we will see that on the backend we have a received event that the customer purchase is saved. And this is made for security reasons. And of course, when we list our orders, we see that we have saved the order inside of our database. Now let's give an overview of the whole application. Basically, after we're rendering our Stripe form, we would like to create a payment intent. And the payment intent actually is first checking our backend for us to query Skype and to give us a special password or a secret. So if I go to this create payment intent, we see that we are posting to localhost the create payment intent API URL, and then we're passing custom information, which item ID we would like to be saved as a metadata in this payment intent. And then we're returning the secret to the client. Now, if we want to go to the backend, the create payment intent looks like this. Basically, we're patching the amount that the customer should be charged based on its item ID. Of course, here you can make a query to the database. And this is again for security reasons, because clients can overwrite this data. And that's why we prefer just to pass the item ID and then to query the database to give us a proper price. And we're querying the Stripe library. We would like to say that the client is intending to pay a certain amount, currency, and what kind of payment method the client is willing to pay with, as well as we're passing as a metadata our item ID. If the payment intent is successfully created, we are returning the special token or secret to our client. Back to the client, this allows us, when we have this secret, to create the Stripe element. And the Stripe element is exactly this form here. Okay, so if it's successfully created, this means that it comes from the server, and we're passing, of course, our secret in order for Stripe to recognize that we are the owner of the form, and we're passing also parameters such as appearance to this element. When it's created with elements.create, we are mounting it to the HTML part. So we have one carting for HTML part. The logic is the same as before, and we are waiting for certain events to happen. All right, so this is the part when we are creating the payment intent and the Stripe element and displaying it on the page. Then the next thing we would like to do is to handle when we are submitting our form in this function handle form. When the intent is created, we would like again to confirm this payment. Confirm payment is from the internal Stripe library when we pass the elements, so the created here Stripe element and some parameters in order for the confirm payment to work correctly. We would like to send additional billing details, and those are taken from our Angular form. We're passing name, address, email, and phone. And also, just because we would like later to use the item ID, we are passing it as the property of metadata. This redirect is also needed for us not to go to another page. If we would like to capture some additional data, we can specify the return URL, and with this we can capture the status of the payment. Okay, that's why we saw payment initiated. We'll send you further confirmation if everything was successful. Now this is on the front end side, and in order to process correctly the data on the back end, we will see our index file. Now, whenever we are confirming the payment, and if it's successful, inside of Stripe, we'll receive a certain event. In order to listen for those events, we can create webhooks. In our case, we are just trying to listen whenever someone is trying to post something under the URL of webhook, and we are handling the past information. In order for this to work, we have installed the Stripe extension, and we have forwarded those events which are coming from the Stripe server towards our local host. So we have twice entered here localhost 3000 webhook, and this has allowed us to listen for such events. And if you can see here, we see charge succeeded and payment intent succeeded. And those two events are emitted by the Stripe server and are redirected to this webhook here, thanks to the internal Stripe extension, which loads the Stripe CLI for us. And whenever we are initiating from the client payment, it goes to the Stripe server and then it goes back from the Stripe server to our webhook here. And then we are making some security checks. And if the event is coming exactly from our Stripe account, we are trying to handle the event based on its type. So as you can see, we here have payment intent succeeded, so we can handle it somehow, the event, and charge succeeded. On the charge succeeded, I'm grabbing something from the billing details. If you remember, we have saved some data here. So I'm grabbing the data from this event and I am creating one order that afterwards I am saving inside of the Atlas database. And that's the logic. What I can recommend is to try little by little to set up all those parts by first installing Stripe CLI, then the Stripe extension for VS Code, and just go ahead and try the code. In order for it to work, keep in mind that you need to have your endpoint secret directly from the Stripe dashboard. It will be unique for your account. The same is true for MongoDB string, which is the connection to your MongoDB Atlas database, as well as the Stripe API keys. So please check them out and fill them. Another way to use them is via environmental variables, of course. Keep in mind also that whenever we are loading up our Stripe library via the load Stripe wrapper, we need to provide not only the test API keys, but the Stripe account.